February 17, 2026, Seth Rollins finally comes back and Bronson Reed brutally attacks Seth Rollins' long-awaited return on February 17, 2026 lasted exactly 7 minutes before Bronson Reed committed the most vicious assault in WWE history, leaving Seth unconscious with injuries so severe that his comeback might have been the shortest in wrestling history. And here's what's going to make you absolutely lose your mind: this attack wasn't random violence or a surprise heel turn, it was orchestrated revenge for Seth's role in destroying Bronson's career 6 months ago when Seth was working as Paul Heyman's agent, and the 5 consecutive tsunami splashes that crushed Seth's ribs and left him motionless proves that Bronson has been waiting, planning, and obsessing over this moment since Seth had him buried and sent back to NXT in the most humiliating demotion in modern WWE. Because Seth didn't just get attacked, he got punished for months of backstage manipulation that destroyed Bronson Reed's main roster run, and the fact that WWE allowed this level of brutality suggests they're either condoning Bronson's revenge or have completely lost control of their locker room as wrestlers take justice into their own hands against those who've wronged them politically. Seth Rollins had been absent from WWE television for nearly 3 weeks after his shocking revelation that he was playing everyone the Final Dynasty, the Shield reunion, the Vision as a triple agent working only for himself. His last appearance ended with him standing on the announce table laughing while Roman Reigns and CM Punk laid broken in the ring, both men realizing Seth had manipulated them for months. WWE had been teasing Seth's return with cryptic vignettes showing him preparing for the next phase and promising that when he came back, he would reveal his true allegiance and reshape WWE's power structure forever. The February 17th Raw opened with Seth's music hitting to a massive reaction, half the crowd cheering because Seth is undeniably talented and compelling, half booing because he's positioned himself as wrestling's ultimate manipulator who can't be trusted by anyone. Seth walked out looking confident, almost cocky, like a man who'd spent 3 weeks planning his next move and was ready to execute perfectly. He grabbed a microphone and began what should have been a promo explaining his actions and revealing his next target. Seth started his promo: "For 3 weeks, you've all been wondering what's Seth Rollins planning? Who's he aligned with? What's his endgame? And the answer is simple: I'm aligned with whoever benefits Seth Rollins in that moment. The Final Dynasty? Used them. The Shield reunion? Manipulated it. The Vision? Playing both sides." The crowd was hanging on every word because Seth's character work has been phenomenal. He's positioned himself as the architect not just of moves but of schemes that are always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. And now, I'm going to reveal who my real target has been all along. Because everything I've done, every betrayal, every alliance, every manipulation has been building toward eliminating the one person in WWE who threatens my ability to control. That's when Bronson Reed's music hit. And the crowd reaction was immediate confusion because Bronson Reed has been off television for months, relegated to NXT after a main roster run that inexplicably fell apart despite his obvious talent and crowd connection. Seth's face showed genuine shock, not acting, but real surprise that Bronson Reed was even in the building, let alone interrupting his promo. And that shock suggested Seth had no idea what was about to happen. Bronson Reed walked out, and his physical appearance was different from when fans last saw him. He'd added muscle mass, looking even more imposing than before. But more importantly, his demeanor was changed. Gone was the playful big man who can move energy. This was focused, angry, borderline sociopathic intensity. Bronson didn't grab a microphone. He didn't cut a promo. He just stared at Seth with the kind of hatred that suggested this was deeply personal, not just a wrestling rivalry. Seth tried to talk his way out. "Bronson, whatever you're thinking, we can discuss this. I'm sure you're upset about," but Bronson charged the ring before Seth could finish his sentence, and what followed was the most brutal one-sided assault WWE has broadcast in years. The attack wasn't wrestling offense, it was violence. Bronson grabbed Seth and immediately hit him with a powerslam with such force that Seth's body bounced off the mat. Before Seth could even process what happened, Bronson grabbed him again and hit a running senton, all 330 pounds of Bronson crashing down onto Seth's chest and ribs. Seth tried to roll out of the ring to escape, but Bronson followed and threw Seth into the steel steps with such impact that the steps separated from their base and went flying. The crowd went from excited for the surprise appearance to concerned about Seth's safety within seconds. Bronson rolled Seth back into the ring, and what he did next will be replayed in Most Brutal Moments compilations for years. Bronson climbed to the top rope and hit Seth with his finishing move, the Tsunami Splash, where all 330 pounds of Bronson crashes down from the top rope onto his opponent's body. The first Tsunami Splash drove all the air out of Seth's lungs. You could hear Seth gasping for breath, clearly hurt. Referees immediately started trying to intervene, but Bronson shoved them away and climbed to the top rope again. The second Tsunami Splash landed with even more impact. Seth's body went limp, and medical personnel at ringside stood up in alarm because this was clearly beyond normal wrestling punishment. But Bronson still wasn't done. He climbed up a third time, and as he prepared for another tsunami, commentary was screaming for someone to stop this. "Michael Cole, somebody stop this. He's going to kill him." The third Tsunami Splash was devastating. Seth didn't move after impact, and the crowd went silent with genuine concern that they just witnessed something catastrophic. Security finally flooded the ring, not the usual 4 to 5 guards, but what looked like 15 people trying to restrain Bronson and prevent further damage. But Bronson fought through them like they were nothing, throwing security guards aside with ease. Bronson climbed to the top rope a 4th time, and despite multiple security personnel trying to pull him down, he managed to hit another tsunami splash on Seth's motionless body. The visual was horrifying. Seth wasn't selling, he was legitimately unconscious, and Bronson was continuing the assault on someone who couldn't defend themselves. Finally, after the 5th tsunami splash, 5 total, a move that typically ends matches with one, enough people managed to pull Bronson away from Seth. But even then, Bronson was trying to fight back to Seth, screaming at him, "You destroyed my career. You buried me. You sent me back to NXT like I was nothing. This is payback." Those words screamed loud enough for arena microphones to catch clearly revealed this wasn't a random attack. This was revenge for something Seth had done to Bronson backstage. Medical personnel immediately surrounded Seth, and what happened next showed just how serious this situation was. The lead doctor called for a stretcher and neck brace within seconds of reaching Seth, indicating concern about potential spinal injury from the repeated impact. Seth wasn't responsive. His eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow and labored. Blood was visible around his mouth, a sign of internal trauma from the repeated crushing force to his chest and ribs. The medical team worked on Seth for over 10 minutes in the ring before they felt safe enough to move him. That length of time suggests they were stabilizing serious injuries before risking transport. As Seth was finally stretchered out, the crowd gave him a standing ovation, not because they forgave his heel actions, but because they just witnessed someone get legitimately hurt in ways that transcended storyline and became about human concern. The visual of Seth being wheeled up the ramp, oxygen mask on his face, completely unconscious, with medical staff surrounding him treating this as an emergency, was one of the most disturbing images in modern WWE. After commercial break, WWE showed backstage footage that explained Bronson's motivation, and what was revealed made the attack even more complicated morally. 6 months ago, when Seth was working as Paul Heyman's agent for the Vision, before his triple agent status was revealed, Seth was given authority to make roster decisions and creative recommendations. According to footage WWE showed, Seth specifically recommended that Bronson Reed be sent back to NXT, claiming Bronson doesn't fit the Vision's aesthetic. "He's talented but not visionary. Send him back to developmental where he can't interfere with our plans." This recommendation led to Bronson being humiliated on television, losing repeatedly, being characterized as not ready for main roster, and eventually being sent back to NXT in a segment where authority figures literally told him he failed to meet expectations. For a wrestler who'd worked years to reach WWE's main roster, who'd been connecting with crowds, who was talented, and over being sent back to developmental because of one person's backstage recommendation is devastating. The footage showed Bronson in NXT, working hard to rebuild, but you could see in his face that something had changed. The joy was gone, replaced with anger, resentment, and determination to make Seth pay for destroying his career trajectory. WWE's presentation of this context created a fascinating moral question: was Bronson justified in his brutal assault on Seth? One perspective: Seth destroyed Bronson's career through backstage manipulation. Bronson wasn't given a fair chance to succeed. He was sabotaged by someone with political power who decided Bronson didn't fit his faction's image. Bronson's revenge, while extreme, was earned payback for months of humiliation and lost opportunities. The counter perspective: no matter what Seth did backstage, 5 tsunami splashes on an unconscious opponent crosses from wrestling to assault. Bronson could have gotten revenge through winning matches, cutting promos, getting championship opportunities. Instead, he chose violence that might have caused career-ending injuries. The crowd's reaction was split, and social media exploded with debates. Team Bronson: Seth deserved every bit of that for destroying Bronson's career. Team Seth: nothing justifies potentially ending someone's career through excessive violence. WWE's booking intentionally created this ambiguity, making both men sympathetic and problematic simultaneously. Updates from the hospital where Seth was transported painted a grim picture: multiple fractured ribs, at least 4 confirmed breaks, collapsed lung requiring emergency procedure, severe internal bruising, possible spinal contusions from repeated impact, concussion from head bouncing off mat during splashes, general trauma requiring extended hospitalization. The most concerning update: Seth Rollins is in serious but stable condition. Timeline for return to competition is unknown and will depend on multiple factors including surgical outcomes and healing process. Translation: Seth's comeback lasted 7 minutes before an injury that might sideline him for 6 to 9 months minimum, potentially longer, possibly career-threatening depending on complications. The irony is brutal: Seth returned after 3 weeks of building anticipation, ready to reshape WWE's landscape, and was immediately taken out in the most devastating way possible by someone seeking revenge for Seth's own manipulations. Later in the show, Bronson Reed gave a backstage interview that was chilling in its calm delivery. "6 months ago, Seth Rollins used his political power to destroy my career. He sent me back to NXT, humiliated me on television, and took away opportunities I'd earned through hard work. So I went back to NXT, I trained, I got stronger, and I waited for the perfect moment. Bronson's eyes showed no remorse. Seth's return was that moment. He came back thinking he was untouchable, thinking he could manipulate everyone without consequences. I showed him that actions have consequences. And if I ended his career in the process? That's the same thing he did to mine. Fair is fair. The interviewer asked, "Do you regret the extent of the violence?" Bronson's response, "The only thing I regret is that Seth might recover. Because he doesn't deserve the chance I never got." That statement wishing Seth's injuries were worse positioned Bronson as a heel despite his justified motivations, creating complex character dynamics. Backstage reaction is massively divided. Some wrestlers support Bronson. Seth buried people for months as Heyman's agent. He manipulated everyone. Someone had to make him pay. Others condemn the violence. You don't potentially end someone's career no matter what they did backstage. That's crossing a line. A third group is worried, if this is acceptable, taking revenge through excessive violence, then everyone who's ever been buried or manipulated might start doing the same. The locker room becomes unsafe. WWE management is reportedly in crisis mode trying to figure out appropriate consequences. Do they punish Bronson? Validating Seth's manipulations went unpunished. Reward Bronson, condoning excessive violence, present this as mutual wrongdoing, both get consequences. Seth Rollins' return on February 17, 2026 ended in catastrophe as Bronson Reed's revenge for being buried by Seth's backstage manipulation resulted in 5 tsunami splashes that left Seth hospitalized with fractured ribs, collapsed lung, and potential career-threatening injuries. The assault was brutal, but Bronson's motivation was justified. Seth destroyed Bronson's career through political maneuvering, and Bronson exacted revenge in the most violent way possible, creating a moral dilemma about whether excessive violence can ever be justified as payback for backstage betrayal. Seth's comeback lasted 7 minutes. Bronson's career was destroyed 6 months ago, and now both men's futures are uncertain. Seth because of physical injuries, Bronson because of potential consequences for crossing lines that wrestling typically doesn't allow to be crossed. What's your take? Was Bronson justified? Did Seth deserve this? Is violence ever appropriate revenge for backstage politics? Explode in the comments because fans are massively divided. If this breakdown gave you the full story, smash the like button and share everywhere. Subscribe to Wrestling News CC because Seth's recovery timeline and Bronson's consequences are developing. Stories will follow. Seth came back and was immediately destroyed, and wrestling just witnessed revenge so brutal it might have ended 2 careers simultaneously.